Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll share here. Right, let me get my slides situated here. Let's go back to the beginning. All right. All right, thanks everybody. Good morning from Columbus, Ohio. It is about 9 a.m. there, so it's a bit of an early start for me for a Saturday, but I'm very excited to be here, very honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I'll dive right in here with getting started with DataDev and automating the Tedium away. So first, let's do some quick introductions, right? Like I don't think I've met most of the people on this call, so it's great to meet people virtually. Hopefully, some of you will be at TC, and we'll get to meet in person here in a couple weeks. But just some quick introductions. I think most of this was already covered, so I'll go quickly. But my name is Kyle Massey. I'm a VP Senior Lead Software Engineer. I run a team of software engineers at JP Morgan Chase. I've worked there. I've worked in my current role for about 5 years, but I've worked at the bank for about 15 years. I've done a little bit of everything. I'm a three-time DataDev ambassador with Tableau, and this year I was honored to be named a Tableau Visionary in addition. I co-lead two tugs, the DataDev tug and the Data Pri tug, and I'm also one of the co-founders of DataDev Quest, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second as well. So moving forward, so outside of Tableau and outside of work, just a little bit about me. So there on the left, you can see me and my husband Dan. We got married last year. That's actually on our wedding day in Las Vegas. We're true crime junkies. You know, if there's any fans of the podcast, My Favorite Murder, or any true crime show, we'll sit down and watch. And we're also huge fans of RuPaul's Drag Race. We are both animal people. So in the middle there, we've got our two dogs. Kevin is the bigger dog that on the right, and Jonah is the smaller one. And we also have a cat who's not in the picture. And outside, when I'm not doing things for Tableau or presenting or coding, I'm someone who really enjoys listening to music. There's always music playing in our house when I'm working, when I'm just doing anything. I spend a lot of time playing video games when I have free time. And I'm also a lover of foreign languages. My degree from college is actually in German. I was setting off to be a German teacher, and life gets in the way, things change, and now I've worked at a bank for 15 years. So that's just a little bit more about me. A little bit more about me at Tableau Conference this year. If you're going to be visiting or if you're going to be streaming any of the content or watching it on demand, I'm actually presenting two sessions at Tableau Conference this year. One of them is called VizQL and Chill, kind of a play on Netflix and Chill, if you're familiar with the phrase. I'm presenting this session with Social Ambassador Will Perkins. You can see the times there, so it's repeated on Tuesday and Thursday. And our goal here was to use the VizQL data service, which I probably won't talk much about today, but it's a new API that just went general availability for Tableau that allows you to query data from a published data source directly and treat it just like any other data you would get on the web. So we've created this totally new experience for what interacting with Tableau content can look like now that we kind of have the freedom of that API. So I won't spoil too much, but if that sounds interesting, definitely check out one of the two sessions if you're going to be at TC. And then the other session that I'm doing, but also on Tuesday and Thursday, is tips and tricks, hacks to level up your server admin skills. So I'm presenting this one with Gigi Zanoli, who is in at Tableau, but she used to be in the community. Anybody who's ever met Gigi loves her and remembers her forever. So if you're someone who ever has to do any sort of server admin activities. Like a lot of people end up being sort of pseudo admins or admins on purpose because it's just how it shakes out a lot of times. But we're going to do basically almost like a tip battle for things you can do with Tableau Server and Cloud Admin that maybe people aren't aware of or is underutilized. So if that's more your style, you can see the times listed there too. Would love to see anybody and everybody at either of those. So just a little plug there. So let's get into the meat of it here. So Dev, like if you've not heard that phrase before, you might not know what that means, right? Or it gets brought up a lot in the Tableau world, but what exactly am I talking about when I say a data dev, right? So data devs are the people out there that ask, how can I, instead of just like, oh, okay, well, I figured out how to do something in desktop and it's good enough. It's I Data devs are the kind of folks that ask, okay, well, how can I embed this in my web application? How can I automate this thing that I have to do, once a month that maybe it's really easy, but it takes me 3 hours? How can I put Tableau workflows behind my internal companies or my company's internal uh, approval system? Like you start thinking about all of the different ways that you can automate, streamline, prevent human error, integrate with other things. And that's when you start thinking like a data dev, right? What can I take or how can I take the out of the box stuff and turn it into what I want it to be or something that fits my needs, that's, not something that I could just ask Tableau to do, etc. So the best way to get started and to learn more about the data dev program is to visit tableau.com/developer. And I have the link here at the bottom as well, and I am going to pull it up real quick. But tableau.com/developer or community/data dev, they both go to the same place, is an introduction to the program here. So you can see here the Tableau developer program provides training, skills, et cetera, the kind of the introduction. But then it kind of goes into all of the different things that are part of the program here. So we've got the various APIs. So if I open up the tools category, this is where we can start to dive down into the individual APIs that Tableau provides, right? So the embedding API, putting Tableau inside of other things. The REST API is used a lot for automation. Your extensions API, which is kind of embedding in reverse. You're putting code inside of Tableau dashboards to extend their capabilities. Metadata hyper connector. Yeah, I won't read all of these, but you can see like Tableau has a lot of tools out there to do lots of things above and beyond what you would get from just the standard server or desktop or cloud experience. And so I encourage everybody who's interested, just kind of read through here, get a sense of like the things you can do, because if you don't know what the possibilities are, it's hard to imagine, where you could take this. But to keep going on the slides, let me switch back to that. So another way to get involved. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one more point that I did want to make on this screen. So for the another big benefit of the developers program is if you sign up by joining the developer portal here. When you sign up for the data dev/developer program, you actually will get a little cloud site for you to use as a sandbox to test out all the APIs. It's totally free. It's very limited on licenses. Like I think you have a total of 3 licenses, so you couldn't use it for any sort of commercial purpose, but obviously you shouldn't. But it's a nice way for maybe you have things that you want to play around with and explore, but you don't want to do it with your work infrastructure. Obviously, you don't want to you want to take work stuff outside of work. So this is just a way to get a free little space for you to play around with. So definitely encourage anyone who's interested. There's not really any risk, and it's a great way to just get your hands dirty. So definitely check out setting up your sandbox as well if you're interested in moving forward with the data programs. So I will jump back over to the slides. And so it was mentioned in the introduction, but another thing that I want to promote here that's a group of fellow data dev ambassadors and myself began late last year is a Tableau community initiative called DataDev Quest. If anyone on the meeting's familiar with the initiatives like Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesday, it's kind of the same idea, except for coding challenges, right? So if I go out to the site, oops, sorry, the Zoom controls keep getting in the way, but here it is. So if I go out to datadevquest.com, we can see here we post challenges monthly. So a little longer than the weekly challenges of Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday, just because coding takes a little longer. But we put out at least two challenges every month, based on things that, either new things that are becoming available, fundamental things that we feel like everybody should know. So we try to do a beginner and an intermediate or an advanced each month. So like you can see here, if I scroll down, so over the last couple of months, we've had challenges for finding a view by name using the APIs, finding the view by the URL, updating connections. This month is an exciting one because we have a beginner challenge for the VizQL data service, which again is just went GA within the last couple of weeks. So it's you're going to hear a lot about it at TC if you're there or listening to any of the sessions. So that's a good way to familiarize yourself as well. So definitely lots of options out there is the point I'm trying to make for getting started. The data devs are the ambassador, my fellow ambassadors. We're a very passionate group, but we're also very excited about getting new people involved. So if you're going down the path, getting involved in DataDev Quest or the DataDev Tug, which is also out there on user groups, definitely reach out if you have questions or want some advice. I'm always excited to mentor new folks who are getting into data dev. So that was a lot of talking about theoretical stuff. So why don't I do some demos now of things that you can do using the Tableau APIs, and some of the things you can automate away. So I'm going to hop over to a little example application that I put together here. So you can see here on the screen, it's just a simple little web UI that I created using an open source JavaScript library. And behind the scenes, there's actually two components here. Let me bring these over. So this is running a front end application in a JavaScript framework, which I'm not going to focus a lot on. I'm going to focus more on the behind the scenes stuff, which is all happening in Python. So let's just walk through one of these and talk about what's going on here. So let's start with probably the simplest one here, which is automated cleanup. So one thing that folks struggle with, especially if you have a large installation and lots of users, and you can't always, as a COE or an admin, you can't always chase behind people and clean up their mess, right? So a lot of times folks create version 1, version 2, version 3 over and over again, or they'll upload something, it gets 20 views and then it's not ever viewed again for 2 years, but nobody knows it's there. So one of the great things that you can do with the API is, instead of trying to go through and sort everything in Tableau by when it was last modified and then decide what you want to delete from there, is you can use the APIs to just get a list of things that haven't been updated based on your criteria or other things. In this case, it's just going to be updated date. So, but you can see here, this is what I'm going to do, right? So I'm going to pick a date, and then behind the scenes, it's going to sign me into Tableau. It's going to filter a list of the workbooks based on their modified date, excuse me. And then it's going to return that list to me, to my web application, and then sign out of Tableau, all behind the scenes, right? So let's see what that looks like. So let's just say I want things that haven't been updated since about a year ago. So if I go back to April of 2024 and select that date and click on Find Items, what I'll get back is a list of the workbooks that match that criteria, right? And from here, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and actually delete them straight from this from this interface. If I'm like, not sure what that is, let me log in and take a look. I can click on the link, which will take me. Oh, I should have done this beforehand. Apologies. Let me get this out of the way. Yep. And this is my little sandbox site. So these are the kinds of things that you can do. So, and when I go in here, it takes me to my site so that I can take a look at it, and decide whether or not I want to get rid of it. So that's one example of how we use the APIs here. And if we take a look at what's going on in this example, there's not much to it, right? So, I'll make this bigger so that's easier to read. So I won't, I know this isn't meant to be a super technical dive, but just to kind of give everyone a sense of what's going on here in Python for these filtering requests. Um, all I'm really doing is this is the standard way to sign in. So this just gives me my two things that are necessary for me to authenticate with Tableau server. Really, the meat is down here. So I get my server and my authorization objects, and then using those, I sign in, right? So I just simply make a call to get all workbooks, and then I am down here filtering those workbooks based on the date that was in the request sent from the front end. And then I'm just returning those as some JSON, and that's what powers the view that we saw on the front end. I have a comment in here about there are other ways to filter. I won't go too deep into that. This specific approach is because date strings don't always work great over the internet, but that's kind of technical. So let's look at another example of things you can do with automation. So one of the big things, probably the biggest thing that we've automated at JPMC for Tableau is publishing content from one environment to another, right? So we have our lower non-production environments and we have production. Users can't publish directly into production that's a pretty standard setup for controls reasons. So what we've created for them is a portal sort of similar to what I'm going to show here in a second. But essentially they come in to our portal, they see the projects that they have access to, and then they can submit a request to us to move the content from one environment to the other. And what we end up doing, once that request is approved, is grab the content, workbook, data source, whatever it is, from the target environment, or sorry, from the source environment, so the non-production environment. We pull that down into our application and then publish it back up to the other environment with any changes that are needed along the way. Like if there's changes to URLs, username, password, et cetera, et cetera, we take care of all of that during the deployment. And we do about 10 to 12,000 of those a month. So obviously we wouldn't be able to handle that kind of volume without some automation. So that has really allowed us to scale up Tableau over the last several years in ways that we never would have been able to before. So I'm going to grab an address here or a path here that I need. So let's talk about this, right? So for publishing a Tableau, for publishing a workbook or data source to Tableau server, we're going to do the following things. We're going to sign in. In this case, we're going to get a list of projects so I can pick where the project or where the content should go. And in many cases, if you only have one project, you could hard code that. But in this case, we'll give the user an option. I will provide the file I want to publish, and then we will see the results. So I can see here in my list of projects that I pulled from my little cloud site. So let's just go with this one. This is a workbook. I'm gonna paste in the path here. Now you could also take this further and do an actual file selector or however, or have it give a list of workbooks that exist somewhere. You could take this as far as your imagination allows you. But for this example, I've got all that plugged in and I'll hit publish. And my workbook has been published. And I could click here and this link will take me straight to it. So yeah, you can start to see how a lot of these things where if you were to do this, you can for a one-off, one user, one thing, they could do this. Obviously, they can do this with Tableau server, or sorry, with Tableau desktop, or web editing. But if there are reasons why you need to lock that down and you don't want users to do that directly, you can use the APIs to still allow them to get stuff done without becoming an artificial bottleneck. And your application takes care of those things by using an account that's an administrator that you control, et cetera, et cetera. So the last example that I want to show, that's also a frequent headache for a lot of users and admins is onboarding, right? Depending on how you run your shop, there's a lot of steps involved to getting someone to a point where they could start using Tableau server or Tableau cloud. For example, internally for us, that involves creating 3 copies of the project, one for our two non-prod environments and then a production environment. It involves creating 4 Active Directory groups. So not groups that only exist on Tableau, but that actually exist in the Microsoft Active Directory. And then coordinating all that, all the timing on all that together. Once it's all done, then we have to create the projects, add the groups to the projects, give them the right permissions, et cetera, et cetera. This is a process that it used to be a combination of a big long list of instructions where it was like user do this, then we'll do this, then you do this, and it was very confusing, and it took about 3 to 4 weeks just to get someone ready to go. Now our automated onboarding, which is similar to what I'm going to show you here, can have a user ready to go with their project in less than a half hour. So again, and just another thing that's really enabled us to scale to a degree that we never would have been able to with the amount of people that we have if it weren't for what DataDev enables us to do here. So looking at the last example here, so what we're going to do, we're going to sign in, we're going to create a project, we're going to create a group, we're going to add a user to the site, then to the group, and then we're going to add the group to the project and give it permissions. And we're going to do all of that in one sweep here. So let's call this the group name. We'll do Legos users. And then for a user, in this case, just do another of my email addresses. And I click on create here. Now it's going to do all of these things. And then in a second here, I will get a confirmation that everything was created. So in this case, I can see it's giving me the LUID for all the group, or sorry, the project, the group, and the user. So I know they were created. And if I hop back, these Zoom things are in the way. If I go over to here and go to explore, you can see this is the project. It was just created just now. If I go into the project and go to permissions, there's the group that was just created. It has permissions and it has a user. So you can see something that, in this very simple example, something that maybe would have taken me 5 minutes, took about 10 or 15 seconds. But you think about scaling that and repeating that, how much time can be saved on activities like that. So I want to be conscious of time. I think I'm getting that's about what I had ready to show. I have other things I can show if there's more time, but I also want to leave time for Q&A if there's any questions, any other examples that you can think of. So I will leave this slide up, and I'm good for Q&A. I think the room is still on mute if anybody's saying anything.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just find out if anyone has questions in person, and then like virtually, people can also drop their questions in the chat.
Perfect.
Any questions? Yes, we have a question. So we have a question. So we just yes.
Awesome.
Hi, Kyle. Can you hear him, Kyle?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was working on a project where I have to scrape data from websites and load it into Google Sheets. But data is so large, which I couldn't do that. So is there a way to automate those processes without using Google Sheets and bring data into Tableau directly?
Did you say I missed the end of what you said, but did you say is there a way to scrape and put something into Google Sheets and then publish it?
Data into Tableau rather than using Google Sheets to automate and stuff like that.
I think I understand where your question's coming from. Yes, and in a situation like that where you're scraping the web and getting a bunch of data, and you ultimately want that to end up in Tableau, the Hyper API might be a really good solution for you. If you go to the section or the site that I linked earlier, tableau.com/developer, and look under the tools, there's an API called the Hyper API, which essentially allows you to create hyperfiles from data that wherever you're getting it from. So if you're making a bunch of API calls and consolidating data together, and ultimately you want that to be a Tableau data source, then you could skip Google Sheets entirely and just create hyperfiles.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. No questions for now, but if you have any questions, please. Oh, there's question in the chat, Carl. So in the Q&A, if you
A way to pull
that.
Instagram data just by the account URL to Tableau. So Tableau, it not directly, I think would be the Tableau's not great currently at getting data from the web on its own. Like you typically need whether it's Python or a tool like Alteryx, a tool that can go out on the web and get the data and turn it into something Tableau can read is usually the first step. So for something like Instagram, like web data can be tricky. A lot of those APIs are either very limited or have a cost associated with them. So you can use Python libraries like Selenium, which basically, if you're not familiar, it started off as testing software, but it can also be used to sort of mock human interactions with the web instead of trying to scrape, because a lot of websites will detect that now. So Selenium, I'll put that in the chat as it might be an option for you there, where essentially you would use a little bit of Python to have Selenium go through and grab all the data from the Instagram URLs that you want. And then again, this is an opportunity where you could use the Hyper API to take that data, turn it directly into a hyper file. And then if you wanted to keep going and be even fancier after that, publish that hyper file directly to your Tableau server or your Tableau cloud site all at once. That's very, very possible and a very frequent use case.
All right, thank you, Carl. So we have a question in the Q&A. I'm going to read it. So if one wants to learn data dev skills, how would you suggest they begin their journey? Resources, knowledge, things to look out for, etc.
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. So I would definitely, I keep plugging tableau.com/developer, but that really is the best way to get started in terms of having a place to play, your sandbox. And all of the documentation for all of the APIs is links out from that one central place. I think another big thing that would be really helpful for newbies. If you go out on, I should have linked that in this slide. I did not, but if you go out to YouTube and look for the channel called Tableau Coders. There's a session that former visionary Zach Geis, or a few sessions, excuse me, that former visionary Zach Geis and I did a couple years ago on getting started with DataDev. And we actually start from this is how you install Python. This is how you set up your code editor, your IDE. So if you are an absolute newbie, but it's something that you want to get started with, you could start with like video number 1 in the Tableau Coders series. And we will, walk you through as someone who's never written a line of code before. And then in the same channel, there are some more advanced videos and specific things like related to blog posts that I've done. So I think that would be a great place to start. That DataDev Quest is out there and is a good place to start sharpening your skills. And then lastly, on usergroups.tableau.com, there is the Tableau DataDev Tug group as well. We are not doing an April meeting because of TC, but we do monthly meetings where we review the challenges from DataDev Quest and walk through this is why we did it this way, and we have just discussions with the DataDev community. So I think if you do one or all of those things, you'll be off to a great start.
Amazing. Thank you, Carl. We have one more question in person. So yeah.
Okay. Hello, Carl. Good morning.
Morning.
So I wanted to ask, while most of us here make use of Tableau Public and the rest, we want to know in what cases would we need to, some of the examples you showed here, in what cases would we need to use it if we are ever going to ever use it, and in what cases, and how can we apply it?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a tricky question, right? It's always the question of how will I know when I need to use this? Or what if, given my use case, what would I use this for? And sometimes that answer is hard. It's hard to answer that question, right? Until something arises and you're like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this way, or I wish there were a way for me to automate how many times I have to repeat all this. So, whether it's for Tableau Public and stuff like that, a lot of it's probably going to be related to gathering your data. And I saw there was another question in the chat about that, and I'll get to that in a second. Gathering data for visualizations that you want to make. The Tableau Public API is available. It's pretty restricted. Obviously, it makes sense. But think of if you're more of a hobby visualizer and you want to put together, this is just a random example, but thinking about putting together something like a resume, a virtual resume, learning how to embed some of your Tableau content into like a virtual resume site is something that you could list as a skill. It's kind of hard. It's kind of like you don't know what you need out of it until you know it. But another good way to go out there is to go out into the documentation and just sort of give it a read through and see like, oh, that's something I do manually all the time. Or man, that's something that takes me 30 minutes each time that I could make an API call or whichever, and save myself a bunch of time. So it's really more about your curiosity, I think, and wanting to take it to the next step, whatever that next step is for you in your situation.
All right, thank you. I think we'll have one more question, and yeah.
Okay, my question is like same thing with the one that I asked earlier. So, is there a way to refresh Tableau Public dashboard without using Google Sheets? Like refresh the Tableau Public dashboard, because that's the issue where maybe we are working with a data that is updating. So, because what we have to do is downloading it, refresh it, and post it back if like we don't have a Google Sheets data source. So, is there a way to refresh it?
I might have to look a little bit further into that question. I honestly don't know. I know that is the method that most folks use to refresh data in Tableau Public. I'm not sure if there's an alternative, but I can ask around and get back.
All right, thank you. I think we have one more Q&A. I don't know. So it says, does this work for automatic refresh and live connections of data to dashboard? I got a challenge of creating a website so my dashboard can be accessible on login and data refresh automated. And I'm thinking of all data Tableau connector. Please let me know that if you got that.
So I wanted to make sure I got the question. So the beginning part is there a way to refresh data? Sorry, could you repeat the beginning?
Yeah, sure. So I think you made mention of something, and the person was asking if it works for automatic refresh and live connections of data to dashboard. And the person was talking about having a challenge where he or she has to create a website where the dashboard can be accessible on login, and the data refresh is automated, and is thinking currently of using OData Tableau connector for that. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, if the data is live, then the refresh part of it, I guess, wouldn't really be too much of a concern because it's gonna just query when it renders. But if we're talking about like embedding and not wanting the user to have to log in, which is a common thing too. If you take the time to embed something into your application, it kind of breaks the experience if the user then is presented with a Tableau login screen. So if you go through the documentation on the embedding API at the developer portal, you can embed and use what's called a JWT, a Java Web Token type of authentication, where essentially your site makes a request for this token beforehand, before the visualization renders. And then once you pass it through, it says, okay, I know who this user is. I'm approving this. I won't make them log in. So if that was part of the question, the embedding API definitely supports that. From a data refresh perspective, if you were using an extract, there are definitely ways to automate that update or that refresh using the APIs as well. There's a question in the chat too, and it's been hanging there. So regarding pulling web data, I don't have a Tableau server account. Is there an alternate method? So In this case, pulling web data, I don't have a Tableau server account. So you don't necessarily need a server account to pull the web data. The web data pulling you'd probably be doing either with a tool like Selenium, Python, maybe Alteryx, one of those tools that can make API calls and massage the data. So you don't need a server account for that necessarily. You may just need an account for wherever you're pulling the data from. So if you're pulling the data from another API that requires an account, that might be your setup step, unless I'm misunderstanding the question.
All right, thank you so much, Cal. I think that's about it for us.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Could I just get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Great. Perfect. All right. And now I'm going to share my screen. Screen 2, share. Could I get another thumbs up if you can see my slides? I see arms in the air. Great. Fantastic. Well, with Kyle's a tough act to follow. I'll try to do my best. But as mentioned, the topic is keeping it simple, designing delightful dashboards that aren't a pain to maintain. So, thank you for the lovely intro. I am Brittany. I work right now as a business intelligence engineer at Amazon Prime Video. I'm a public ambassador, Tableau visionary, 2023 Iron Viz finalist, which all sounds and looks very glamorous from the outside. But in my day-to-day work, I share many of the same design dilemmas that you do. I often get stuck staring at a wall of numbers, trying to figure out what should I do next? Where do I even start? So hopefully this session will give you a framework for getting beyond that wall of numbers and helping your customers, your stakeholders get past that wall too. The perception, I think dashboard inspiration can be a bit overwhelming. If you Google, business dashboard inspiration, you see all these fancy things with, fancy chart types, neon colors, everything's designed in Figma or PowerPoint, all these custom shapes. Even looking at Viz of the Day, the stuff that's put out there is often incredible. And I look at that and think like, wow, like this is so great. How can I design stuff that looks that good? It can feel a little overwhelming, and I wonder, like, do I even have time to do that at work? Like, this is going to take me forever. And then once I finish it, someone's just going to ask for a change anyways. So I want to remind you that the reality is that it doesn't have to be that complicated. You don't have to design a Viz of the Day to make an effective Viz at work. For example, this is fake data, but a real recreation of one of my most popular dashboards at work. It's barely a dashboard, but it was a tool that I created because someone on the product team needed to look up the emails of people that were using his feature so he could collaborate with them. We couldn't give him access to all the emails because that wouldn't be good. But we built a tool that when he logged into this Tableau dashboard, he could punch in the project he was working on and with row level security, get the right data he needed back. This didn't even have any charts on it, but it was a tool that let him get his job done. And so it was very well adopted without really anything fancy. So I want to kind of help you create this shift when you're thinking of creating your next dashboard. Is less I'm creating a dashboard, but more I'm creating a tool. And here are some questions that I like to think about when I'm opening Tableau and making my next thing. Am I building something to explore or explain? Sometimes you're going to make an explorer type dashboard that lets people, play with different fields, click around, just kind of see what's going on. Other times you're going to need to make a report, and you might be making some charts and copying and pasting them into a document that ends up getting emailed out or shared out later. Both are equally valid, but knowing which one you're designing for can save you a lot of time. Do I need to simplify the information? Is this something that, do they need to see every line item, or can I just roll it up to some, big aggregates or bar charts? Am I trying to uncover or display patterns? This might change what chart type you use. And then maybe the most important question is how far can my tool take them before they need to submit a ticket? How can I design something that my customer, my stakeholder can play around with what I've built and they can get the answers they need without needing to bug me? That's kind of the ultimate success. Or, maybe they're so interested in the tool that I've built that they've seen what's possible and can come to me with a ticket that asks the next best question, or, hey, can you build this? Let's go further than just give me all the data. So we're going to do a little bit of a makeover. It's not Monday, so it's not Makeover Monday, it's a Makeover Saturday. And we'll walk through just kind of step by step how to apply this to a real scenario. Well, I said real scenario, we are going to be using Superstore, but this is one that I don't think I've seen made over as much as the typical sales dashboard. So we're going to start with the order details page. And this is something that's included with Tableau, so you can find this and work through the steps yourself if you'd like. So opening up this sheet, it's auto-sized and it's just a table with a bunch of stuff on it and some filters. It does satisfy the requirement of giving people the details, but if I want to find an insight from this or find a pattern or explain to my boss, what's going on with orders in the South, I have to export this somewhere else and play more with it. So let's define a purpose for this dashboard and give our customers a tool that they can use to explore orders data and figure out what's going on without having to download the data into Excel themselves. So the first thing we're going to do is add some context and structure. In this case, I've used a sort of template that I like, which just has a title, a line, and then I've moved the filters off into a filter pane so that they're kind of all in one spot. I've also added a little more context to the title, saying very explicitly, this is what this dashboard is for. In this case, it's an explorer. I want to use this page to explore orders. You can click any chart to filter or use the filter pane. So this gives people options to interact by clicking around or interact with the filter pane in a way that maybe they're just used to that. The next step is to add some visualizations. So when I'm stuck and not sure how to proceed from going from a text table to something a little more exciting, the first thing I do is I actually take everything that was a filter and make that filter a chart. So in this case, we've taken the order date field and turned it into a line chart. This will help your customers surface insights because you can kind of see like, oh, there's a trend. Orders are going up over time that we couldn't see in the table. And then the other charts, I've used design dual axis chart for the bar charts to make them look a little fancy, hopefully get my customers' attention, and showing the percentages of the orders that come from different regions, categories, and segments. So this isn't too difficult. Just take what was a filter, turn it into a chart, add it at the top, and now I've added a new way for people to interact with this data. Next up, incorporating highlights and interactivity. So in this case, we'll take a look at the table first. In this case, our pretend stakeholders don't care about the shipping time or anything like that. So we've gotten rid of those fields. And then what we've done is we found out that actually they really care about what's not profitable. So what I've done in this case is add color to the table to just highlight the orders that are not profitable by highlighting the profit ratio and profit fields. Now that I'm looking at this table, I can see like, oh, 4 orders jump out right away as maybe those are problem spots to dig into that I couldn't see before. And it would have taken me a lot of time to figure out like, where are even the spots I should be looking at? And then over on the left, I've added what I call a metric explorer. This is basically taking some of the fields that I had before, turning it into a scatter plot, adding the ship mode on shape. And then now my customer can actually decide like, do I want to look at sales versus discounts? Do I want to look at sales versus profit? Do I want to look at quantity versus profit? And then by playing with that, you're allowing them to explore things that maybe they wouldn't have thought to do on their own, and they can start to spot their own patterns. And then finally, everyone's favorite part is documentation. I say this because I know it's so important, yet even I don't want to do it. And so I always look for the shortcuts to spend as little time doing documentation and as little time updating documentation as possible. So in this case, I've added an information overlay which is really just a sneaky blank sheet in a container that I've added some annotations to and added a show hide container. And this way you can point out, hey, this is what how you're supposed to interact with this section of the dashboard. Here's what to click if you need to send me a ticket. This way, everything's in Tableau. They don't need to jump from Tableau to another window back and forth to figure out how they're supposed to be interacting with it. You've got it all in one place. So let's dive a little deeper into tips for how we did this makeover. The collapsible filter pane, it used to be for show hide containers. You could only do them floating, but now you can actually have them inside tiled containers. And what I like about this is doing it this way. Sometimes you can see like our table got a little squished, but when you open this filter pane, it actually doesn't cover any of the data. So this lets your customers adjust some filters and then see what's happening with their data in real time so that they don't have to like open the pane, do some filters, and then like close it again to see like what happened. Doing it this way kind of keeps everything up front. I also know that like show hide containers are really popular for filters, but you don't have to use them. If you've got stakeholders that, this is their first time using a BI tool instead of Excel, you don't have to hide those filters away because they might not know that they're there. It's okay to keep those visible, and then maybe in version 2 or version 3, you can put them behind a container to give yourself some more space. What's most important is meeting people where they're at so that you kind of drive that interaction. Dual axis designs. In our makeover, I used a bar and bar chart to show the percentage against a whole. These are some other dual axis designs that are fairly simple. In this case, it's a shape sneakily stacked onto a bar. In this case, it's another a brighter bar at the front and then a paler bar. These sort of things can really make your Tableau visual look pretty fancy and look like not out of the box Tableau without adding layers of complexity that are going to take you a lot to kind of like, okay, they need another chart. How am I going to do this again? By using some of these like simple designs, you can add a lot of visual interest without having to add a lot of development time. Hacking the legend for highlight tables. So you'll notice that the table only had 2 fields highlighted and it didn't look like a giant heat map. In this case, for what I did is I opened the measure values on the color card and then used separate legends. And then a custom diverging color palette with orange for negative and white for positive with a stepped color of just 2 steps. So you don't have that gradient. And then every other field, I actually used another custom diverging palette, set it to 2 steps, and just set both the colors as white. That way, I only highlight what I want to highlight without making the whole table Technicolor. And then I use parameters in the scatter plot to allow people to choose what they wanted to look at. And another application that you could use parameters is switching the color palette. So maybe you've got, people want to see it colored by this, but a different department wants to see it colored by that. You can do both. Use a parameter to allow the user to toggle different color palettes, and then you won't have to make like 3 different dashboards to just show it 3 different ways. And then behind the scenes, keeping organized is key. Similar to documentation, love to talk about it, kind of hate to do it, but 2 easy ways to make your dashboard easy to hand off, easy to explain to the next analyst that's got to maintain it. Coloring the tabs in Tableau is actually like a really sneaky feature to stay organized. I like to color the dashboard tab 1 color, and then any sheets that belong to that dashboard get that same color. And what's really neat is that when you're editing your filters, that color will also pop up on the side. So when you're trying to figure out like, why are my filters working, using the color can actually help you troubleshoot faster. And then the other thing that I don't do as often as I should, but I'm trying to be better, is actually naming my dashboard objects. So making sure that, it's not just horizontal container, vertical container, horizontal container, vertical container. Actually saying like what they do, or like don't delete this one, can help the next person that's breaking open your chart understand what you did. So it's always like, how much documentation can I put in here to avoid an email, to avoid a Slack ping? It's just my way of being a little lazy to avoid more questions. That way, the questions that you do get are better questions that are more fun to answer. And then the last one, informational overlays. This was something that it was born out of a frustration. I was in a situation where I was told, like, hey, we were going to do PowerPoint overlays. And I did not want to spend half my day making stuff in PowerPoint, having to update it when the charts changed. I've got a full blog post that walks through this, but the too long didn't read version is having an overlay as a show hide container with a sheet that doesn't have any stuff visible on it. And then you can just right click, annotate, add some fun looking annotations, and then that's an easy way to create documentation that's in Tableau, doesn't take a lot to update, and you're not managing external files. This is a quote from a software engineer who's working at Blue Sky. The goal isn't to build a beautiful system, the goal is to build something useful. Sometimes you get to do both, but that's a short-lived accident, which will be fixed in the V2. This is something I have to try and remember sometimes, is sometimes you just need to ship it, and that's okay. Sometimes you just need to get the tool out the door. It doesn't have to be the next thing that's going to win Viz of the day. It doesn't have to be something that will win Iron Viz. Sometimes having a tool that's useful is more important than having something that looks cool. And by building stuff that's useful, your stakeholders will trust you more. They're going to ask you to do more and more things, and will kind of get you on that road to building stuff that you like to design. So finally, I want to say, I know I've mentioned Tableau Public can be overwhelming for inspiration at the beginning, but there is a lot of great stuff out there. So I definitely encourage you to find inspiration on Tableau Public. But also, don't forget to look at the world around you. I just created a chart because I was looking at my step data, and I use a Fitbit, and I really liked one of their charts, so I wanted to recreate it. I play Pokemon Go, so I was looking at their widgets and I was thinking like, oh, that's a neat way to display the data. Or even your weather app. A lot of data that's displayed in the world around us, they have to fit it on a small screen, fit it simply. So it's a great way to kind of take inspiration on ways to simply display data in ways that are really effective. And of course, a plug for me, if you want to be part of a data set, coming up is Tableau Conference, in person and virtual. Every year I've been running a step tracker project where people can input the amount of steps that they've taken during that week. Last year we had over 160 participants, only 3 were virtual. I want to make this as accessible as possible to everybody. And I'm not a runner, so. And then places you can find me on the internet. I've got a blog. I hang out in the Data Visualization Society and Women in Data Viz Slack. I'm on Blue Sky now, and of course, Tableau Public, as always. And that is my last slide. So I will go ahead and stop sharing so that I can see everyone's questions.
Questions from anyone? Yeah. We have a question, so she's coming. And also, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A section if you are joining us virtually.
Hi, Brittany. So you mentioned making dashboards that are insightful. So are there some steps you take when speaking to your stakeholders to get exactly what they want for the dashboard, so you focus on that?
Yeah, so some questions I like to ask during like requirements gathering is what kind of decisions do you have to make with this data? Because that will inform what fields I pull in, what kind of charts I might make. One field we've added internally to our ticketing form is what date is this request dead by? So like if you don't get this information by a certain date, is it useless to you? That helps us kind of prioritize and think, okay, well, if you need this by end of day Friday, I'm going to spend a certain amount of time on it versus if you need it by the end of the month, maybe I have more time to do some fancy charts. But the biggest question is always, what decision will you make from this data? Because if it's not going to make any decisions, then do we really need to build anything? I see a question in the chat. On a dashboard, how many sets of colors are allowed to make it simple? It depends. I think the answer the internet will tell you is probably like 5 to 7 colors. I think it's more important to have your colors be consistent. So if you're using one color for sales, try and use that same color throughout the dashboard. One popular piece of advice is, design it right in black and white. So try and design things, maybe change all your colors to gray first, and then add color back in to highlight a call out, or use it to signal something. You kind of want to use color to say, hey, this is what you should be paying attention to. And that might mean you need 5 different colors for what people are supposed to pay attention to. It might mean you only need 1 color. So it kind of depends. But I would say there's no like hard and fast set number of colors. I try and keep it as few as possible, just because once you get like past 8, it's really hard to make colors that look visually distinct from each other. Yes, I see the comments from Alice and Dennis that Tableau Public is not real life, and clients don't always need complexity. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's also a question in the Q&A. I don't know if you're able to see.
Just seeing it. So what are some tips you'll give someone who's always been building a Tableau Public, gets a job, and now has to build for stakeholders with different objectives and demands? Welcome to my life. This is a great question. I would say keep publishing on Tableau Public if you can as a hobby, because what I've found is that even though most of my work in the real world is bar charts and line charts and heat maps, my practice in Tableau Public has allowed me to become faster at developing on the job, so that maybe when an opportunity for a cool chart comes up, I can think, oh, wait, I did that before for a makeover Monday. I can actually do that pretty fast and work it into my development timeline. Or I know someone else did something like this and it was really effective for showing the data, so I can download their workbook and copy it and take it in. One of the things that, like, especially because I mean, at Amazon, it's a lot of people writing documentation. It's a lot of Excel heavy, kind of text table heavy environment, is that giving people options to show them what's possible. So yes, they asked for a text table. Show them a text table and a heat map. If you've got time, build what they requested, but also on the side be like, hey, I was playing around with the data a little bit. What do you think of this? Kind of giving them nuggets of what's possible might open the door to building more fun stuff, because a lot of times the people that are asking for the data don't necessarily work in Tableau or visualization tools, so they just don't know what's possible. And you can be that person that kind of shows what the opportunities are.
Thank you, Brittany. Any other questions? Okay. Oh yeah. If you're raising your hand, you can just like drop the question for Brittany in the chat, so in the Q&A. Let me see if there's another question. Okay, I think that's about it, Brittany. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
About today. We really appreciate you coming here. And then,
I do want to say I did publish the workbook we worked through today. So if anyone wants to download it, crack it open, go crazy. Hope you have fun with it.
All right.